This man made it to the NBA, even though he was a Crip. How does someone go from joining one of the deadliest gangs to signing $100 million deals and becoming an NBA superstar? Well, this is the story of DeMar Derozan.
Did people forget DeMar Derozan gets from LA?
He's thrown up the Crip sign. What does that mean?
DeMar's life was filled with more tragedies than you can imagine, and it all started with the place he grew up in, Compton, California. DeMar lived on the east side, where just walking down the street was dangerous because of a constant war between the area's notorious gangs, the Bloods and the Crips. But no matter how scary Compton was or how relevant the Crips would become to DeMar's life later on, this place helped DeMar fall in love with basketball, all thanks to the most important person in his life.
My dad was always into sports. You know, he had me playing everything. Shit, every weekend he'd take me to the park, do something. I gotta give credit to Pops for sure.
But even though DeMar was preparing to become a young star, things turned deadly.
Early on, 5, 6 years old, I lost my uncle. I lost my best friend to murder. I haven't even had a developed mental yet, and I'm comprehending the worst thing possible that a kid could go through.
DeMar was constantly showing up to funerals, and it taught him at a young age that any day, even he could be murdered. So he was forced to do whatever it took just to survive.
You knew what to look out for, you knew what to expect, you knew where to go, where not to go, what this street was, what this street wasn't. So the caution and the survival tactics that you needed to have.
But just learning the streets wasn't enough. DeMar lived in a neighborhood constantly full of gang members, and he felt the only way he'd even stay alive was joining them. So he became affiliated with the Compton Crips.
You know what's crazy? Like, I was straight Crip.
DeMar felt like he finally found his place, but combining that life with basketball would soon nearly get him killed. It's all because DeMar's high school basketball journey didn't start how anybody predicted. Instead of choosing a school that produced NBA stars in the past, DeMar chose to stay close to home at Compton High, where he thought he'd be protected by the Crips.
Where you coming from right now?
School, fresh out of Compton High, from their career.
Here's where DeMar gained the reputation as a kid who was dunking and bullying people on the court. That's what literally got him nicknamed Debo, after the popular movie character from Friday who bullied people in the streets.
Oh shit! Here come Debo, give me your stuff.
But speaking of the streets, DeMar becoming this basketball bully was a blessing, because in his hood, there's actually an unwritten rule called the Hooper's Pass. This was a rule all gangs agreed upon to keep high school basketball players off limits of being targeted by any crimes. Now that DeMar got that pass, he was able to play basketball with no fear and instantly became a high school phenomenon. As a freshman, he averaged 26 points and 8 rebounds per game. That's better numbers than what LeBron James did during his freshman year, where he put up just 21 points and 6 rebounds per game. So DeMar's hard work was finally paying off, until one day, DeMar was walking to his favorite spot to practice hooping. And that's when a couple criminals started walking his way and threatened to kill him. But then they realized it was Debo, and they knew what would happen if they violated the Hooper's Pass, so they let him go. His basketball ability had everybody in the city talking about him, and his career was just beginning. So this near-death experience motivated him to take his game to a whole new level. He began dominating everybody, became one of the best shooters the city had ever seen, and eventually got himself ranked as the 3rd best high school player in the entire country. So once he became this great, he got an exclusive invite to play in some of the biggest high school basketball events in the entire world. DeMar was proving to everybody that he was that guy, while also representing the Crips. DeMar admitted that in school, he wore blue every day, and he'd even throw up Crip signs during his games. So DeMar felt untouchable, but out of nowhere, everything came crashing down. One night, DeMar was rushed to the hospital. It turned out that his dad had a stroke. So doctors ran tests and everybody was fearing for his life. But all Dad could really say to DeMar was, "I can't die. I can't die until I see you make the NBA. So DeMar felt he had no choice but to make his basketball career successful. But with time ticking, he also realized a huge problem. Because of NBA rules, for DeMar to even be allowed to get drafted, he'd have to be at least 19 years old and play 1 year in college. So DeMar wasn't going to be able to jump right into the league like other star players before him. And also, moving away from a place that kept him protected was scary. So instead of choosing a university in a safer city that would get him more recognition, he chose to stay as close to home as possible and play for USC.
You could have went anywhere. Why USC? I was terrified to leave home. And the crazy thing with that, even when I went to USC, I had such a culture shock. My first 3 months in college, I still was living in Compton.
Really? It's funny as hell to hear you sit here and say, I was terrified to leave Compton. Most people are terrified to go to Compton.
Right, yeah.
DeMar's college experience was all about just doing what was necessary for basketball. And during his 1 year playing for USC, DeMar started putting his name on the map.
Jumper, no good. Tipped home by DeRozan. By Gibson. Left side, DeRozan. Comes in and slam dunk.
He was a special player. And after NBA scouts saw what DeMar was doing during his practices,
DeMar Derozan. Oh, Myers.
Oh! Sports analysts compared his game to NBA legend Vince Carter. This was strong praise for a player who hadn't even stepped on an NBA court yet. But nobody could stop DeMar from doing everything he could to go pro for Dad. And before he knew it, his college career was over. So his opportunity to make Dad proud was finally here.
Nervous?
Nah. Ain't no telling what will happen tonight.
Tonight, 60 young men realize their lifelong ambitions of reaching the NBA.
Getting ready for the draft.
Got my boy Steph. They go Blakey Blake, black and purple.
About to head to the draft.
My man.
DeRozan.
Look at it. Jay, tell them what it is, Jay.
We're about to get drafted, nigga. Turn it up, bro.
Feel like Obama.
DeMar Derozan, this is it. This we waited for forever, man, and this night is it, man. It's crazy.
With the first pick in the 2009 NBA Draft, Blake Griffin. With the third pick, James Harden. With the seventh pick, Stephen Curry. With the ninth pick in the 2009 NBA Draft, the Toronto Raptors select DeMar Derozan from the University of Southern California.
You know, there are people who say he's got as much potential as any player in the draft.
With one of the top picks in the draft, he was now officially in the NBA and a Toronto Raptor. But as happy as DeMar should have been, once the shock of the moment wore off, his phone rang. He found out that Dad was sicker than ever. So DeMar rushed to visit him, knowing he didn't have much time left. But when DeMar walked in, Dad didn't even want him to be sad. All he cared about telling DeMar was a goal to accomplish before he passed away, to go win a championship. And DeMar knew, now that he was in the NBA, the only way he could accomplish that was becoming a star. Once DeMar stepped on the court, he developed into one of the league's best scorers, got invited to the dunk contest.
This DeMar Derozan had his first dunk when he was 11 years old in 6th grade.
And eventually he stepped himself up to All-Star level, where he was voted into the All-Star game to compete with the best players in the NBA.
DeMar Derozan.
But just becoming a star was only step one of Dad's goal. Time was ticking to win a championship in time. And even though DeMar was making plays that had stadiums going crazy, the Raptors randomly just gave up on DeMar and traded him.
DeMar Derozan, the newest member of the San Antonio Spurs. What was this past week like for you?
This trade became one of the biggest headlines in the world, because after DeMar gave a city everything he had, he was dealt to the Spurs, whose odds of winning a championship were nearly zero. And while he began playing for this new squad, none of DeMar's teammates knew how sick his dad was getting or what DeMar was secretly dealing with.
My dad got sick. I done flew from Boston to LA, went in the hospital. I flew home, LA to Toronto, by myself, played in the game. Did the same thing in San Antonio, but nobody never knew. It was times I flew in the day of the game and played.
So while DeMar was spending all this time with Dad before it was too late, while trying to maintain being a basketball star, DeMar was also forced to watch the player he got traded for, Kawhi Leonard, win the Raptors their first championship ever while playing in his old spot. And to make the situation even worse, out of nowhere, DeMar made an emotional Instagram post letting everybody know that his dad passed away. Words won't serve justice to what you meant to me. Never missed a game, a practice, an opportunity to show me what a great father was. You pushed me my whole life to be able to withstand the roughest of times. All I cared about was making you proud. But DeMar's dad must have been looking down on him, cause not long after, DeMar was traded to one of the most famous teams in the NBA for winning championships, the Chicago Bulls. So DeMar knew that now was his time to finally accomplish Dad's goal. And instantly, he started playing his best basketball ever. Not only did DeMar start reaching milestones that only superstars do.
He got it!
Oh, DeMar Derozan.
He becomes the 50th player in NBA history to reach 20,000 points.
Some of his shots started making NBA history.
A 50-piece to put it away!
And he's finally getting the praise he deserves.
He can ball. He's a rough rider. He's not scared of anything.
DeMar Derozan is doing this in the house that MJ built.
Name me a guy that got buckets like DeMar Derozan is doing since Michael Jordan.
But even with everybody talking about DeMar, all he's determined to do is win a championship for his dad. And no matter what he's been through, or will continue to go through, DeMar's embraced the entire journey, cause it's all what made him who he is today.